Let's talk about the decision to try to take this company national. It's been criticized a lot. You know, guys like Dusty Rhodes and Vince McMahon would say, or not Vince McMahon, but Ric Flair and other luminaries would say, boy, if he'd have just stayed east of the Mississippi or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The idea being, hey, just stay a territory. But the wrestling business is changing, and you see Vince swallowing up all of your competitors, and all of these individual territories are going by the wayside. So it feels as if, hey, it's now or nothing. You got to go all in. And Crockett certainly did his best to do that. He's
Yeah.
got the superstation. He made a 7-figure investment, from what I understand, to get that time slot. In addition to that, he's gone and tried to strike a deal with Watts and get that territory. And more importantly, not just the territory, but all of the television networks and the agreements that Watts had in place. This puts him over that magical number that he thinks the syndicators are looking for. We'll call it 100 stations. That got him to that number to where he at least had something that could be competitive with Vince. But now, after Vince has maybe sabotaged Starcade with Survivor Series, the decision is not only to run Bunkhouse Stampede in January as a pay per view, but to essentially do it in Vince's backyard. This is going to be at the Nassau Coliseum, the show we're talking about today. In
Mhm.
hindsight, was it poking the bear a little bit to run it in Nassau, do you think?
I guess it might have been. I think they just wanted to play the number one market, and that's Vince's market. I mean, it has been forever since the territory days. So it might have been poking the bear. I'm sure that it was for a lot of people. When in different roles have different consequences and bring along different pieces of baggage, and you never really know until everything starts unfolding. And then in my role as a play-by-play guy, you just you got to go to work, and all that behind the scenes shit. Jimmy and Dusty had big plans, but they didn't have a game plan that was going to work.
Right.
The idea of going national is not a bad idea at all. All those markets out there that weren't being serviced, weren't being played. It was a tough scenario, Connie. And but I think going national was the right thing to do, but you had to have a better game plan. And obviously, as things worked out, we can, I think, safely say we didn't have the right game plan.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt about that. I just can't help but wonder, it's sort of how you said earlier, one thing leads to another. And it does make me wonder, had they not chosen Nassau Coliseum, would Vince have tried to compete? Would Vince have tried to create the Royal Rumble to sort of sabotage it? Or would he have just let him run the show? But
No,
maybe he feels like this is a declaration of war on two fronts. You're trying to ease in on my pay per view business, which I feel like I innovated, silly. And then two, you're running in my backyard. And of course, this is a guy who understood there are no boundaries because he's going and taking other people's territories. But it's clear, man, the battle lines are drawn. And I wanted to know, when did you first hear, hey, Vince is now, since the cable companies won't let him compete with another pay per view on this same day, he's going to run a show for free on USA. Heads up with us. When do you hear that?
early on, it was the talk of the locker room,
Yeah.
and guys were just most guys were that knew Vince were not surprised or shocked. It was something that any smart promoter, and he don't mistake it, he might have been unethical in the eyes of some, but he's a smart son of a gun, and he still is at 77. So they've been kind of quiet in their camp. I haven't heard a lot of dirt lately. I guess, but I'm sure there's another shoe will drop here, there, and yon. It'll be interesting to see how the creative of the Royal Rumble is played out. And will Vince's fingerprints be on that, or will it be more distinctively Paul Levesque's creative fingerprints? That's interesting questions to ask. And of course, there's only one way to get the answers. Watch the show.
Right. Speaking of the Bunkhouse Stampede, Meltzer would say that the Royal Rumble will be an annoyance to JCP, but he thinks the real where the rubber meets the road is how well can can they promote this show built around a Bunkhouse Stampede? The idea is Meltzer doesn't think a Bunkhouse Battle Royal on its own is going to do big business.
Right.
They better load the undercard with hot angles, and if they do, maybe they can make a nice profit. But this is still sort of a test for them because pay-per-view is in its infancy. Most homes don't have pay-per-view. But he would even say the super wrestling fans who do have pay-per-view capabilities in their house probably also have a VCR, meaning they could watch one show and record the other. But the real test is, he says, quote, the key is how well JCP promotes the show over these next 3 weeks and how strong and intriguing the card looks to the general public. And I think that, as simple as it may sound, that is an astute observation by Dave, because he's saying, hey, let's not get too caught up or distracted by the quote unquote war. They got to work on and focus on their own business.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of times that is something that we could even address today, where there is some tribalism about WWE versus AEW. But if the folks who are actually handling those respective businesses are focused on their business and not so much what the other guys are doing, their business will be better served, no?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. You focus on the task at hand. And what we needed to do is, as I said earlier about that momentum issue, is that we needed to get some guys or angles, programs, marriages, whatever you want to call them, hot and interesting and unpredictable, so to speak. So I'm a big believer that, we just didn't have all those pieces in place, but you got to take care of home base. You got to take care of the in-ring product. So people go away from there and say, well, did you watch the Bunkhouse Stampede? No. Oh man, it was a hell of a show. Really? Yeah. So the next time you have a pay-per-view, you've got some little chatter that people have liked it, and I'm not going to miss this one. So it was important to have a bell-to-bell success throughout the night. I'm not sure we succeeded in all those areas, but in any event, it was an interesting weekend in Long Island, to say the least.